Honestly, I'm like easygoing. I mean, you pick the one that you think is the best, and you say, hey, here's what I did. And, I'll be like,
and I can always change it too. Once it's released.
I'm pretty laid back about that. It's like
you're laid back.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be like, no, I blinked here. It's nothing like that.
No, you can't be like that when you're doing. Not in the podcast world, anyway.
Yeah,
not in the podcast world.
It's got to be like real interaction, and this can't be all scripted. So.
No. So when I first started doing these shows, that's how it kind of came off, because they were live, and I would actually, first I had like just a piece of paper, then I would have like my iPad, and it would time out on me when I'd be trying to have the questions that I would ask a person. So as your book alludes to, there's a lot of lessons learned, just that somebody didn't actually sit you down and say, hey, James, do this, then do this, and then do this. Well, that happened, I'm sure, in like boot camp and different commands you went to. Some of the harder lessons that I was getting from the book were just experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny. I never, when I wrote the book, I didn't sit there and think, hey, I'm going to write these critical life lessons. Mm-hmm. Or when I read the war journal again, for me, they just came out. Like, holy shit. They were just really, they became apparent. And, it's like, I go through my life and these things are intuitive. But then when you actually sit down and think about it, then they really come out and they hit you really hard. So it was kind of weird how it happened.
Yeah. Well, they say those good lessons should not be second nature; they should be first nature, right? That's almost what you allude to as being intuitive.
Yeah, but sometimes it takes you somebody to slap you in the face for these intuitive things to actually be applied.
Right.
And that's kind of what I hope the book would do is take these life lessons. Mm-hmm. You can apply them to your own life and then also use them in the future. Because so many times you learn, after action reports.
Yeah.
How many after action reports have you read and have you done, and then they just go away?
Yeah.
And nobody uses them. Oh yeah, and then you go back and you're like, oh yeah, maybe we should have learned something from that. And this is like an after action report for life.
Yeah. So every time that happened, I like that analogy. I want to stick with it for a minute, but it would be the after action review, the after action report. I'm sure you've done hundreds of those, either run them or been involved in them. We'll focus on the time in the book, when you're across in Afghanistan and or in Iraq, right? Mm-hmm. And Kuwait, that there was after action reviews and it'd be the same old thing. Like, I'm listening to your book, and one of the overarching emotions, if I could put it in one word, I'm going to have to use the F word here, is frustration. I got a lot of frustration from the book.
Yeah, there was. I think when you talk about the frustration and then you combine that with the physical and emotional kind of strain, that pretty much sums it up. It was there was a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety, a lot of angst, because of the unknown. Mm-hmm. And I think and then with the downtime, and then combined with the high op tempo, so you combine all these things, and I think frustration is probably a good word.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about anxiety. I remember reading earlier in the book that you guys didn't even know when you were going to go or who was going to go. Like when you were about ready to go, you're kind of just sitting there waiting. Are we going to go? I think we're going to go. We're going to go today? I don't know. We're going to go today? I can't imagine how frustrating that would be.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, you don't know when you're going to go, and you don't know what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. That's the other part about it. So you go over there with this big unknown. We're going to go operate in the desert. We're going to go do mobile reconnaissance. At first, as I tell you in the book, we're walking around the desert. I remember being in the middle of the night, walking through the desert and looking at my guys going, what are we doing here? This is absurd. Right. And then we transition to kind of like a mobile reconnaissance unit, and still not knowing what the mission is, not knowing when we're going. And then I remember there's a part in the book where I was on watch at 12 o'clock at night, and I overheard the company commander talking about we're going in with Corporal Coons, and then we were on watch again when the air war started. Mm-hmm. And for us, then we knew it was real.
That was a clue.
that was the clue. And like I wrote in the book, the minute I overheard, the company commander saying it, I told everybody. So we kind of had a better idea.
Yeah. So there was, I guess, we're 20 years, 25 years now ago?
30
years ago?
33 years ago. Desert Storm.
So do you keep in contact with young guys and girls who are serving now, doing a similar position that you're doing?
No, and I mentor some people, but I don't. I've tried to. So like actually, the book is a really cool way for me to go back out. Like I reached out to VMI. I reached out to like a couple ROTC programs in my area, because now I feel like, and based upon the feedback I got from the book, there's a need for this, and there's so many people who really want to get a better understanding. And I think that this is an opportunity for me to go back and actually do that.
Yeah. Because I was wondering if the feelings have to be similar that they would be reporting, maybe from different circumstances. Because I mean, I'm just looking as a technological nightmare from the amount of the intelligence that you got, the rate at which you got it, and I would probably say not got in both of those sentences, right?
Yeah.
The freedom with which it was even released. I'm reading things where people you had a really good connection and you're getting good intelligence from someone in another unit, and then somebody wanted to step on that.
Yeah. So let me say this: we didn't get good intelligence. As a matter of fact, I think I wrote in the book at one point, we were like mushrooms. We were fed shit and kept in the dark. And it was through my personal relationship that I was able to get this intel and then share it with the teams. And the funny story behind that is, I'm getting this intel. So I had to drive back to Camp 15, a couple hours, go get all this intel, bring it back, and then I was.
And this isn't just a thumb drive.
No, this is like actual maps with laminate and pieces of paper.
Right.
This is, and that's the other thing. This is 30 years ago.
Yeah.
War has changed. Technology has changed. We're working off of maps with, acetate paper, and people don't even know what acetate paper is.
Google it.
Yeah, Google it. And so anyway, I bring everything back, and the team leaders in recon are the ones who actually go out on mission. They plan mission. Officers don't have a role, but they're supposed to coordinate, with intel and supply, logistics, make sure you have your ammo, and the staff NCOs help the officers do that. But it's really the team leaders, or that's where the rubber meets the road. They're the planners, the executors, and they're in charge of operations. So I would bring the intel back, being a former team leader, and I share the information with everyone. And it was like our little cabal. It was really a lot of fun, until this one staff NCO, he found out, and we had issues, him and I, and he thought he had that "I got you" moment. Oh, I got you now. And he told the lieutenant. He found the intel that I had, went into my little.
It wasn't like you were keeping it just for your own little war games, right?
Shared it with everybody. Yeah.
You probably saved lives with that.
Nah, I don't know. I mean,
don't be so humble.
I
mean,
mean,
had to have.
I don't know. Anyway, but what happened was he went into my little hole, found it, and then went over to the lieutenant. He's like, I got him now. So lieutenant is like, WTF? He takes it to the company commander with me. Come with me. And I'm like, oh shit.
You're like, this is it.
Yeah, I'm like, oh no. And I already had another issue with some Jack Daniels we'll talk about later. But going from the company commander, and he had known me while I was in recon for years, so I had a really good rapport with him. And so lieutenant's like, so Corporal SISCO, we found this, and he's been taking intel, and the company commander's like, Corporal SISCO, where'd you get this? And loyalty to my friends, loyalty to my teammates, that's not gonna, I'll take the heat.
Yeah.
I was like, sorry, can't reveal my source, sir. He kind of looked at me. He's like, well, are you able to get this like anytime you want? And I'm like, yes, sir. He's like, okay. He's like, what have you been doing with this? You're just asking some questions. And I told him everything except for where I got it.
Right.
And he goes, can you get this every week? And I'm like, yes, sir. So it turns out we were getting better intel than he was. So he looks at the lieutenant, and the lieutenant's ready to like, I got you. And he's like, yeah, good job there, Corporal SISCO. Hey, just keep me informed and bring this stuff to me, and then we'll disseminate it through. So the lieutenant's just sitting there like, and the lieutenant's like, well, sir, this stuff's classified. He's like, are you still here, Lieutenant? So big backfire. But this goes back to kind of like my ideas. When I was in the teams, it was all about the teams, all about the guys, accomplish the mission, take care of the troops, and kind of like my leadership principle and style, which I applied to business, which I applied to my, raising my children, and and I put that in the book, because that's one of the things that comes out as a life lesson.
Yeah, can you talk about that? Like, when did you do it on purpose? When did you first realize it went from you were just doing it because it was there to where I'm making a conscious effort to, let's start with raising my kids this way?
Yeah, that's I really don't know. There wasn't like a moment, like this trigger event. Well, there was, when I got divorced and I was going through all these custody issues, it really was a time for self-reflection and understanding. But when I wrote the book, a lot of it came out, but it's always been there. I think a lot of military folks, police officers, things like that, when you go through the academies and training, kind of gets ingrained in you in a way, and it becomes a part of your life, whether you consciously or subconsciously apply them. But for me, it really was writing the book where it really was, the clarity was there.
Did your children see it in you? Or could you see the difference when you go to an event and there's other kids and parents and other kids and parents and you're seeing differences?
Oh yeah, I mean, so parenting today, I have very strong beliefs in. What I see as parenting is a lot of parents just give their kids stuff, buy them stuff.
You want to be their friend.
They want to be their friend, and they're the Uber mom. They're I'm going to take you to practice. I'm going to take you here. I'm going to take you there, and they don't really get involved. And for me, my parenting style is very hands-on. You ask my children, what's your dad's job? And they don't say, well, he's the president of ENODO Global. They say, my dad's job is to prepare us for life. And then you ask them, what do Ciscos do? And they'll say, Ciscos don't lie, cheat, or steal. Now, that's parenting in my opinion. It's big on, on discipline, on structure, things like that. I coached my kids' rugby teams, but like for what I see as parenting these days is kind of upsetting for me. Hey, get on the Xbox. Hey, go do this, and they're not involved. People have become, in my opinion, very lazy and selfish. And that combination does not go well with parenting. I mean, if you want to raise your children the right way, I truly believe you have to be very hands-on, and you have to be very structured, and you have to do certain things. So
do you think if the Marine Corps, my cousin was a Marine right around the same time you were in, and he talks about how the Marine Corps boot camp instilled discipline, teamwork, and having to be able to do some things on your own, but discipline, and repetition, and being able to do it. Do you think that helped you make it through some of the darkest days that you write about in that book?
No. Not at all. No, because Marine Corps boot camp it pales in comparison to when you go through amphibious reconnaissance school and RIP and all the Marine Corps Special Forces kind of training. So I would say that boot camp gave me some discipline and structure. However, it was really going into the Special Forces community and going into a recon where that was the real test of your mettle and really hardened me. And in many ways, as I had talked to in the book, it hardened me physically, but also hardened me emotionally. And like you know from the book, there were certain events that really solidified my my psychological and emotional kind of hardness. So
yeah, one of the first ones that I definitely wanted to ask you about was, tell me about Christy.
Yeah. So I called Christy the other night and told her I was coming up here to tape and I was going to crash at her house and then drive here. She's actually wasn't feeling well. But so Christy was really one of the first woman that I dated. And funny story, sorry, but this is how we met. She had snuck out of her house. We were on the Point Pleasant boardwalk. I met her. I was with another friend of mine. I met her. We hit it off. We had ice cream. And I was just out of boot camp. And, I had that high and tight, walking around like Billy Badass. And we're walking her, and I was like, I'm going to drive her home. I was borrowing my dad's car. and we're walking to the parking lot, and this car, Buick Grand National, and back then those were like the
Oh yeah, I remember the Grand
the
Nationals.
black ones, you know. And this Buick Grand National comes just whipping through the parking lot. Tires are smoking. Pulls up right in front of us and jams on the brakes, and I'm like, WTF, you know?
Huh?
And you know, you just out of Marine Corps boot camp, you're ready to kill
Yeah, yeah.
anybody. And this door opens, this guy gets out of the car, just starts yelling and screaming, and it was her dad.
Oh, I think it was their dad or ex-boyfriend. It had to be one of the two.
Yeah, it was dad, and I didn't know she snuck out. Anyway, so get the fuck in the car, you great Jersey guy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, we're the only ones who use that word.
Yeah. See, we don't use it in Northern Virginia. We're kind folk.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, you know, he just grabs her, he throws her in the car, tears off, and before he tears off, he comes walking up to me, and you know, I'm just like locked, and he goes, "I hope you had a good time with my daughter. That's the last time you'll ever see her." And I go, "As a matter of fact, I did, sir. She's a good woman," or something like that, you know. And he didn't know what to do.
Right.
Totally diffused it.
Yeah.
He was speeding off. So anyway, the next day I found out, and this is before cell phones and text messages. I had to call friends, find her address, go on Google Maps, print everything out, you know.
You didn't have your intel source yet. Could have just got you.
No, exactly. And drove to her house, knocked on the door, and her mother answered the door, Jill, and she's a great woman. And so she's like, I'm like, "Hi, I'm Jim SISCO. I was with Christy. I'm just here to bring back her jacket." She left it in the car. And
Thank God.
I wanted to make sure she's okay. And the father was there, and he tried to be, a dick again. And she's like, "Come on in." Oh, she was so nice. And Christy's grounded, but she can come out and say hi. I was like laughing. Anyway, so I just, I maintained a friendship with her for, till this day. And she's the one who gave me the war journal, and she asked me to write in the war journal so I could, she could see the war through her eyes when I got back, or through my eyes when I got back.
How is she with this? Like, knowing that this book is out there, that she's a part of the book, that you and I are talking about her?
Yeah, she's really cool with it. She's happy with it. I mean, she's been a big supporter through my divorce and these custody issues, and been just a really good friend. And she's seen me as a father. She's seen me throughout my life. When I went to college, and then when I joined the Navy, and then as a father and a husband, and then through this divorce. So she's been steadfast in her devotion as a friend, and I really appreciate her being a friend in my life.
What's an evasion chart?
Escape and evasion.
Yeah.
So
this is super interesting to me.
Yeah, back in the day. So people don't understand. This is 30-something years ago. We don't have Google Maps, and you can't plug in your how do I get here? And people become soft. You actually had a chart. A nautical chart that you opened up, and it would be like this, but this, and you had to plot where you were going. So when you had to escape and evade, if you got caught, you had these charts you would carry on you in the area you were, so you knew where to go. And I mean, this is old school. I mean, it's hard to understand that you're carrying, these maps, and I'll give you an example. As a team leader, I would go out on a 5-day mission, and I would memorize all the call signs and frequencies for each day, and the windows and the times. Nowadays kids are like, they don't even know. You ask them, call your mom's number, and they're like, I don't know her number. I just dial mom.
Yeah.
So these escape and evasion charts, were part of all of this stuff you had to carry on you, or memorize and understand. So it was it really. It was a lot different back then.
Did you know Morse code?
No, but when I first got to Recon Battalion as part of RIP, they tried to teach us, and that's awful.
Oh, so they got rid of that?
Oh yeah, it was awful. You're like, I was like, I can't do this.
I was going to ask you to say something. Teach me something cool in Morse code.
I can't help you.
A couple times throughout the book, and this is the part that piqued my interest. A couple times you said, I was talking to God, but he was never listening to me. And then one time you said something different. I want to talk about that first.
Yeah.
that feeling.
No, that's fine. I mean, some people get uncomfortable when they talk about their faith, and so for me, I grew up Catholic. Go to church every Sunday. Hominy domini, da 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 da.
Yeah.
But you don't learn. You go through CCD, and it was more of a chore than anything. And my grandparents, I had to actually count the church money, every Sunday after Mass, and then put all the coins in wrappers. And we lived right across the street from the church. The priest would come over every once in a while, have dinner. But anyway, so I didn't have a strong foundation of faith. And I go to Desert Storm, and I didn't. There's a lot of people. Some people are like, they dive right into faith because they feel like they're going to die. And and I kind of allude to it in the book. I had a presence about me. I knew nothing was going to happen to me over there.
That was clear.
Yeah, not out of arrogance, but just out of I knew that nothing was going to happen. And although it was only 30 seconds away, so. The first time, and I write in the book, and you remember, like when the chaplain flies out in the helicopter, he gets out, and it was almost like it was so orchestrated. He puts some MRE crates up, and he puts these little thing on them, and he's wearing his camouflage utilities with the green, Catholic thing on it, and he gives his mass for about an hour, 45 minutes, and and you could see a lot of people. I would watch. And people are going up to him, and some people are getting confession, other people
getting saved.
Yeah, and I didn't do that, because number one, I had this presence that nothing was going to happen. But number two is because I hadn't seen him in my life, and I wasn't going to be able to start praying and try to find my faith now because it was almost disingenuous.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of times when I was by myself or certain things happened. I kind of said, hey God, where are you? What's going on? And 30 years later, or no, 20-something years later, I met Kevin Corpenant in the Pentagon, and we served together. He's in the book. And had never seen each other for 20-something years, and he has very strong beliefs in his faith in God, and we reconnected, and he's the one who really helped me. And it was only till later on in my life, even when I was married and with my wife, and we'd go to church with the kids, but it wasn't until even after that that I really found God and my faith. And I think it's important. And that was one of the critical life lessons that I wrote in there, that, I wish I had found my faith earlier in my life, because it helps in so many ways. And some people are afraid to talk about it. And I'm not like one of these guys who wears my emotions or, on my sleeve, but it really helps people. It gives them hope. It gives them, something in some of the dark times in their lives, and some people really need it. Others not so much.
Right.
But I believe it is a fundamental part. And show me somebody with a strong belief in God or faith. 9 out of 10 times they're pretty straight, pretty sharp, pretty good people.
Straight shooter, right?
Straight shooter. Yeah. They're good people. And I think that's it's a measure of their character.
I agree. I definitely agree. You had mentioned that it gives people hope. And there are a lot of things, especially nowadays, that people are turning to replace maybe that hope with something else, whether it be instant gratification. I know you had mentioned that, substance abuse and so forth, and so forth. How do you feel that we could change that to give people that life lesson, faith, earlier? Because it seems like we're going the wrong way.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast on the way here about that. It was pretty funny. But I don't know. I mean, all I know is what works for me and what I believe to be true. And the minute I start, trying to impart my knowledge and wisdom or my beliefs, personal beliefs, or my opinions on other people, it doesn't work. But the book does a really good job of kind of laying out these things, and you decide for yourself.
Right.
I know what works for me. I go to the gym every day. I wake up every morning. I try to be a good person. You know, I still do stupid things like this. When I was at Chick-fil-A, he told me to go to Chick-fil-A. I went, I opened a door and held a door for a woman, and she was 10 feet away. You know, I could have just went and gone and just doing the right thing. So I don't really know what, because society today is so complex, and I don't know what the answer is. You know, and I don't think a lot of people do, and a lot of people struggle not knowing. You know, all I know is, you know, like I said, the book provides different kind of ideas and insights, and you know, I wrote it so it could be a guide for people to navigate in the really dark times in their lives.
Yeah, well, you definitely had some strength somewhere from some source, whether it be self-created, God, a combination, or your training and experience and will and desire. Because when I'm reading this book, there's some times in there where had I not known that you and I were going to have this podcast, say someone had just given me this book, never told me anything about you or anything, just said, read this book, I would have said, he's not going to make it till the end of the book. There were times when you were talking about just haven't had a shower for 30 days, haven't had hot food, you know, it keeps raining, the wind won't stop, and you're alone, desolate in the desert, and over, and it's just that theme kept popping up, you know?
So I'll tell you where I got my strength from. And I'm going to give you a really important piece of information that I think a lot of people are not aware of. 70% of the people who, we're talking about soldiers, veterans who commit suicide, have had childhood trauma. So people overlook that. I grew up in a terrible environment. So my father and mother were divorced when I was 1. My mother was married 4 times. My father was married 3 times. And when I talk a lot about the book, the solitude, being alone, that was something I was accustomed to because, you know, going through my childhood, you know, trying to get love from, being void of love from a mom, not having that emotional tie, that screwed me up for a while as I wrote, you know, about how my relationships with women were screwed up until later on in my life because I didn't have a mother figure. And then trying to always please or find the love from my father, and, you know, this battle that was really what gave me that inner strength. You know, being alone as a child, trying to find love and not having love, grandparents raising you, and then going through the adversity, the physical. You know, this is I'm gonna bag on David Goggins. Watch this, David.
Uh-oh.
I don't know. A lot of people are fans of him, and you know, I appreciate what he does.
He just turned left. I hope he doesn't.
Yeah,
know what it is.
what he does. But anyway, it's easy to be hard. It's hard to be smart. And what I mean by that, I can go out and run 20 miles. I can go out and do all those things because when you're mentally strong, the physical things you can overcome. It's the mental things that will break people, and those were the things what you see how as I write. It's this mental toughness and fortitude that I had from this childhood experience that kept me going through everything.
Okay.
You know, the physical stuff, you know, I've been through cold weather training, I've been in jungle training, ain't nothing but a thing. You know that. You know, I tell people I can stand in a bucket of shit head first for just tell me how long I got to do it.
Right.
And it's the emotional things that really, really, you know, really draw on you and really can break you the most. And those are the things I've gotten feedback from a lot of my friends. We don't talk about this stuff, and one of my friends, Dan Kinzel, he called me up at like 10:30 at night, and it was on a Friday night, and I was at a friend's house, and he's like, "Hey man," I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "Yeah, I was watching Netflix. I was gonna binge all night, and the UPS guy came. It was your book." And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I just started looking at the pictures, as most Marines do." Hey, look, pictures. And he said, and then I started reading it. He said, "I didn't put it down. I just finished it." And then we talked for like an hour and a half. And it's a way for people to kind of connect with their inner demons or connect with the things that they haven't talked about, including Nick Kuntz, who's like one of the main characters in the book.
Yeah.
He shared with me before the book came out, because I shared a lot of what I was doing with him. And he's like, "Hey man, 3 years ago I went and sought help for a lot of the PTSD issues that I was struggling with." So there's a lot of us who are facing similar situations.
I want to talk about that. I want us to take a quick pause right now. I think now would be a good time for a pause. Anytime you want to pick up this book, The War Journal, just drop down in the show notes. If you're listening to this on a podcast, when you get to a safe location, obviously you can just go in the show notes there. There'll be links where you can get this book. It is really a good book. When people, I used to get offended. People would tell me, "Oh, it's an easy read, Corey." I'm like, "Are they assuming that I'm stupid?" Like, I'm like, why do you say that? But then you just said it just generally, and I actually asked somebody. So when somebody says to me like it's an easy read, I'm like, they're like, no, because most people don't like reading, so they're just trying to lure you in, just as they would lure any other person in. It's ice cream truck music, Corey. It's not just for you. Like, okay, all right, I get it. So no, it is. I like the way it's written. I like the way there's the notes that you actually wrote from your journal, and then new writing, clearly, where you're older, wiser, had time to reflect on it, learn those, applied those lessons, and now you're fleshing them out, so to speak.
Yeah, so that's the cool, so I did a podcast about my situation, and I shared the war journal, which was what I said earlier when Christy gave me the book. Mm-hmm. I made journal entries in it almost every day. There's a couple days I missed because of things that were happening. Mm-hmm. So I sent her the war journal, and she said, "You have a #1 bestseller here." And I was like, yeah, cool, whatever. I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever. And she's like, "No, really, will you write this book?" And then we talked about it. So what you said is exactly it. What you have is the actual journal entry, and then the context to that. And like in the first journal entry is December 25th. Mm-hmm. We're in the chow hall. We're looking at like all this, they put the chow hall Christmas decorations up that mm-hmm. day. You have a good chow hall meal, and the next day they're gone. And
like it never happened.
Never happened. And then, we're talking about we're trying to get burlap bags out of the dumpsters, and then I give you the context. At that time, people forget, this is 32 years ago, the Iraq had the 4th largest army in the world. They had just fought a war with Iran. They were gassing the Turks. Mm-hmm. They had like 5,000 tanks, and nobody knew, so I'm giving the context to understand how, what the perception would be for that, 20-year-old Marine, mm-hmm. 20-year-old Marine, soldier over there. Yeah. And it really, I think that is really gives the book, having the context mm-hmm. and then applying the life lessons and fleshing them out. Mm-hmm. And it is an easy read because it was written by me, #1. And I wrote it for my friends because all my friends who are Marines are like, "Hey, did you write it in crayon?" Yeah. And you have a lot of pictures. And I try to, I focus to the audience.
2 main requests, right?
Exactly, yeah. Crayons and pictures.
So talking about that 21-year-old Marine, and you get off the plane over there. It's like, all right, you get on the plane, hey, we're going to war, You're flying, some people fall asleep, whatever, you got stuff to do. You get off the plane, and now you're much, much closer. Like, when does it start to hit you? Or does it hit you?
No, and here's why. It didn't really hit me until, I think, there's one passage in the book, once the air war started, mm-hmm. the shit got real. I wrote, yep. The shit got real. Yep. No, because think about this. You're training, you're preparing, you're on ops, you're doing real world deployments, you're doing training missions. So now you're flying over there. It's kind of like the same thing. You're used to it. Mm-hmm. And now you get in your tent. You're used to it. Now you're doing exercise. You're used to it. It was when the air campaign started. That's when I saw a turn in myself. Mm-hmm. But I saw a turn in everybody else. Mm-hmm. A lot of people found their faith real quick. Mm-hmm. Other people were writing KIA letters home. It was a transition. Some of the people who were the biggest wise asses all of a sudden started acting differently, and there was a change in beliefs, perceptions, behavior, mm-hmm. and something I noticed. And I remember I wrote something else. We'll probably get to it, but mm-hmm. I saw how it had changed me in ways that I couldn't really understand at the time. And I think I wrote very prophetic. I have aged in years that won't be on my face.
Yeah. You said you've aged in years that that won't show physically, but definitely maturity.
Yeah.
Definitely
Unfortunately,
maturity.
they show now.
Yeah, that's probably in the 60s page in the 60s up there. That was really, so that was kind of like what I was looking for. Now, a difference between you're a brand new Marine flying over to the first Gulf War, as opposed to now you're going to Afghanistan. You've got some time, some sand under your belt. Is it a different experience emotionally when you hop off into now? You know this is going to be hot soon. It's going to be hot almost now.
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
honestly, when I got to after Desert Storm, you know, when I went to Iraq and I went to 3 tours in Afghanistan, it was totally different because war was different, combat was different, technology was so more advanced, and I didn't get any rush or thrill or you know, from being in combat.
Right.
You know, we're in an MRAP shooting at, you know, Afghans, and it's not the same. You know, funny story, I don't know if I should tell, but we got in a firefight and I was with a SEAL team, and I was a lieutenant commander. The platoon commander was a Navy lieutenant, so I outranked him. However, he had OPCON, so I couldn't tell him what to do. Operational control.
Okay.
And so we're like 4-hour firefight, and I'm like, hey, why don't we envelop him? He's like, what? I'm like, look, the Mission Marine Corps Rifle Squad is to locate, close with, or destroy the enemy by fire or maneuver, or repel the enemy's assault by fire or close combat. I said, we got fire spirit. All right, let's just do it. And he's like, I was like, never mind. So 4.5 hours later, waiting for birds on station to drop casts, close air support. So the war was different. And I didn't get that rush. I mean, Desert Storm was totally different.
Fear, trepidation, nothing. You were just, I'm ready. I'm ready. What about the people around you? Like, because you said you noticed once it got hot, once Desert Storm got hot, once they turned the lights off. By turning our lights on, we turned theirs off, right? And you say you noticed a change in people, right? Were they turning it on? I'm like, had you been in a command level position and saw that change happening at the ground level? And this is now your first war that you're commanding as a commander, and you're seeing this change. And you didn't see it happen to you. You didn't experience happen to you. What does that look like?
So I'm going to sum it up with one word: presence. So people who have been in combat, who have experienced the things that I have, I think they have a presence about them. And when I was a lieutenant and a lieutenant commander, and when I was in Afghanistan, people were just very comfortable around me because I had that presence. You know, when you have that commander or that leader who, you know, becomes unnerved and starts yelling, and, you know, that permeates throughout the unit. So when you go in there, like as a Mustanger, you know, former enlisted person, you know, people automatically will see that presence, and they'll kind of, you know, align, you know, with you psychologically, emotionally. You know, you will have a huge impact and influence on their behavior, on their actions. And, you know, for Afghanistan was totally different than Desert Storm, and Iraq was totally different. And but you can apply the same things to those different environments to have the same outcome.
Okay. Now, I don't expect you to be a soothsayer, but, you know, we're looking at Ukraine, we're looking at China and things like that. Just for 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds now are thinking about going to the military. And I threw those two big words up there on purpose to ask you this question. You know, my son, 17, wants to go in the Air Force, you know, hopefully to go to fly and let the government pay for his college if we're lucky, you know. But what would you say to 17, 18-year-olds who are thinking about that?
It's a great experience. I mean, for a lot of people, it gives you and teaches you so many things, and you're automatically kind of thrown into the mix where you're exposed to different personalities, different cultures, different beliefs, and then you have to work as a team to accomplish a lot of common goals. So are there drawbacks to it? Yeah, but overall, big plus. Now, there's also the threat that you could go to war, and you could go to combat, and you could lose your life. But if you look at the numbers, they're really small. But that is the sacrifice. Some people are, you know, real patriots, and they want to go and they want to, you know, serve their country. Other people do it for the GI Bill. But whatever you know, whatever your reason or rationale, I think it's a good decision for a lot of people. I mean, it was a great decision for me. I mean, I have literally have done things and had experiences that I would never have been able to do if I was not in the military. I was the military liaison for President Karzai. I flew around in G7s. I mean, I've done traveled the world, been over to 46 countries. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I seized the day. Carpe diem.
You did. You definitely did. You did. I'm glad, and first off, thank you for doing all those things. Thank you for signing up, not knowing what was going to happen. Thank you for staying there when you didn't know what was going to happen. And again, from reading this book and just looking at some of the notes I have there, it just seems so difficult, so difficult. Like I get claustrophobic sometimes when I had to get an MRI. I'm like, and you're sitting in a fighting hole in the wind and in the rain, in the dark, in the desert, and you can't get out, even if you wanted to.
Yeah, I don't, when I look back at it, it's kind of like Forrest Gump, kind of like a Forrest Gump, stupid is as stupid does. You just do it. You just endure the hardship. You just do it. And you're with your friends and your teammates, and they're suffering, they're miserable, and you just do it. And I'm not better than any of them. They went through the same things that I did, except for, as in the book, a couple of those things that really were those trigger points, or those were the adversity that not a lot of my friends knew about. But yeah, you just do it, and you gut through it, and that's kind of the way I look at it.
You were talking about the ROI rules, or ROE rules of engagement.
Oh no!
I know I might be going all over the place.
Oh no, that's okay.
But I can't do this chronologically.
No, I'm going to get in trouble for this one.
Well, all right, so, I could just hit backspace.
No. ROI, rules of engagement, or ROE.
Yeah.
ROE has vexed soldiers from the beginning.
Can I just say, as cops too, that we don't particularly love when they're fluid?
Yeah, I mean, telling you under what conditions you can engage the enemy or how you can react. So I talk about in the beginning, when the staff sergeant says, we're out on patrol, they have wild dogs out there, and we're not allowed to shoot the dogs. And he says to us, you better have a piece of your camouflage missing or your ass missing before you shoot. I'm like, and you know what we do? Like, fuck that.
Yeah.
So, and you're not allowed to have, can't be hot. No rounds in chamber. Well, I'm on guard duty and, patrolling at night, and they're like, you got to be weapon safe. Anyway, that was a major hindrance. So, fast forward, I'm in Afghanistan. And this is where ROE was really terrible. Afghanistan and Iraq. It handcuffed people. Couldn't do anything. Afghanistan, I wasn't allowed off the base if I was with a buddy team. I had to be in full battle rattle. And I was on part of a special program, so I never did any of that. As a matter of fact, I had a goatee, and I wore civilian clothes, 5.11s, and carried my M4, a 9mm, and just did whatever I wanted. As a matter of fact, a Navy captain was like, "You're going to shave that goatee." So to piss him off, I just shaved this, and I had the Hulk Hogan Fu Manchu. So the funny story is, I'm in a briefing with General McChrystal. General McChrystal was the ISAF commander. He was in charge of Afghanistan. I was a hand select working with him previously to go over there. I get over there, just finished my immersion training. I speak Dari. We're in this presentation, and he knows me, and I'm a ball buster in a way. And he's asking questions, and I raise my hand. I'm like, and he sees it, he doesn't want to answer it. And finally he answers me. I go, "Hey, sir, I just got one question for you. When are you going to loosen up the ROE? Because once you do, don't worry, I'll take care of business, and I'll turn the lights off when you're leaving." And he just started laughing. He's like, "Come see me after this." But that was the ROE was probably one of the biggest frustrations that we faced, over in, not so much in Desert Storm, but in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's become a huge issue because war has become political. And
it's visual, and it's because it's visual, it's political. It's the same thing. I hate to, just because I'm a cop, I think cop applies to everything, but there's a very similar parallel with law enforcement. When law enforcement became visual, it became political. And yeah, there was rough edges. There was things that law enforcement clearly had to and still must change. But you're right. People do or don't do things because of the politics now, as opposed to what's actually the right thing to do in this situation.
And it's impacted policing, and it's impacting military operations in a way that it's hard to kind of comprehend.
Yeah. So what do you say? I mean, you have the stage now. We got the book. Everybody's going to be reading the book, going to be listening to this podcast, hopefully watching this on YouTube. How are we going to try and turn this tide? How are we going to try to make sure that this next generation of 17, 18-year-olds that are going to sign the contract and do 10,000 push-ups are going to be all right?
So there's a couple ways I could answer that. One of the feedback comments that I got from somebody is that book should be in front of every recruiting station for Marines. And it should be mandatory reading where they read it and they come back the next day. And if they still want to join, they can join. But why I bring that up is because I want this to be part of the Commandant's reading list. I want it to be in institutions like VMI, the Naval Academy, even ROTC programs. Because this doesn't just talk about those harsh conditions and emotional stress and all this. It talks about leadership. Think about you're reading this as a second lieutenant or a staff NCO. How you're perceived by these people and how you conduct yourself. I mean, it's a valuable.
Oh yeah.
It's a valuable learning. Now, how it's applied to life, totally different. And here's why. Everybody has their own will. Some people read that book, get nothing from it. Other people read that book and be like, I need to give this to my kids when they turn 17 or 18.
Right.
So it all starts with making conscious decisions for yourself, for your children, for your family, for your community. I think that's going to be really the turning point.
Yes.
Until people start holding themselves accountable and others accountable, it's just going to continue to just do whatever.
That accountability word creeps into just about every conversation that I have, right? Is that accountability word. And going back to your book, and you're talking about leadership. There are some leaders, some sergeants that you were working under or for or with. I'm not sure I can trust this person. I want to. You kept saying I could hear the internal battle. You're saying I want to be able to trust him. I need to be able to trust him. But I'm not sure I can.
So I've never thought, I don't say I'm better than anybody, I'm smarter than anybody, I'm stronger than anybody, but so many people come to me and like, dude, you're a stud, or dude, you're this, or dude, you're. So I never do that. I try to humble myself. However, one of the biggest injustices in life is when you're smarter than your boss, or and what I struggled with there, I struggle with in life a lot of times. Everybody doesn't have the will or the strength or the fortitude or their character or whatever, and you see that in people, especially in business, and people take shortcuts and they're not held accountable. But you hold yourself accountable and you try to, in the best way possible, hope that you as a role model, some of the things will kind of like catch. And that's what I do. And the most important thing for my children, I need to be a role model, and I need to be consistent. And when I went through this divorce and I went through all this custody stuff, I said to myself, this divorce will not define my character. My character will be defined how I manage this. And if you apply that to life and to business and to parenting, it's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, it's so great how you're able to actually have dual meanings, really three meanings with a lot of things coming in this book. Is how you handle it then, how you handled it in your life, and then how you want to make this available so other people, should they choose to, can take some of the lessons and better their lives and those that they care about. So I want to jump back and forth between the book and real life and so forth. I'm going to jump all the way back to pages 30 and 31 and talk about leadership challenges and the lack of operational experience with some of the leaders. And that's kind of why I was touching on that with differences between the first Iraq and then the entire Iraq and Afghanistan. And then now we're looking because we've been in so many hot wars, the potentiality of going hot in Europe, the potentiality of going hot in the South China Sea, that void should not be there then, right? That lack of operational experience.
It is.
The void is still there.
Yeah, and here's why. Most of the people who were in Iraq, so think about me. I was in Desert Storm, and then I get out, and then I joined the military again, and most of the people who had combat experience had retired or gotten out. There was only a small number. And those people, when they went to Iraq and Afghanistan, I mean, it was a very small number. Mm-hmm. Same thing happened now. Those people who were in Iraq and Afghanistan, they're depleted from the military. If we go to another engagement, in South China Sea or Ukraine or whatever, the number of people who have actual combat experience within the military is once again depleted. Mm-hmm. I will say, however, the training has gotten a lot better, and I think that that would make them better prepared in a way. But there's still those leadership issues, and the reason why the leadership issues will always exist is personality driven. And I wrote in the book how the minute the shit hit the fan, some of those officers, they wanted to be in the shit. Mm-hmm. They wanted to get their combat time.
Yeah, the guy wanted to run and go get on the radio and make the report himself, and
ripping it out of my hand. I'm like, give me that shit. I mean, here's an example. I'm in Afghanistan. I'm running President Karzai's trip in Kandahar. Mm-hmm. We have 2 Air Force planes, one C-130 and one C-141. Mm-hmm. The C-141 is supposed to put all of the president's vehicles in there, his up-armored SUV, the Humvees. The fucking Air Force pilot, Glory Hound, who's flying the C-141, the president got there first, takes the president and 10 people on a C-141, flies in the Condor because he wanted to fly President Karzai.
Are you serious?
I pull up 10 minutes later with all the vehicles, all the PPS agents. I'm like, where's the C-141? Oh, the pilot took them off. I'm like, we sat in Kandahar for 4 days with all these Afghans in tents because one Air Force pilot wanted to fly President Karzai. And he knew that we could put all this shit on the C-130. Leadership, personalities. Are you doing, and if you go back to these 2 things, mm-hmm. you'll never fail. Accomplish the mission, take care of the troops. Mm-hmm. And that's why everywhere I went throughout my career, people love me. Not everyone. I'm kind of a dick.
I was going to say, I got some notes here. I know a couple people may have thought differently, but they use a different adjective.
Yeah, but no, that's why people enjoyed working for me, my peers, my contemporaries, and my subordinates, because I was always accomplish the mission, take care of the troops.
So to be quite honest with you, you were your own worst enemy earlier on in your career as far as getting promotions.
And throughout my life. I mean, I've struggled my entire life. Because one of my good friends, Abdul Raham, great guy, he says, it's an Arabic phrase and I can't really say it in Arabic, but he says, what is in your heart is on your tongue. And I've always been like that. And that has probably been the biggest impediment for me because what is in my heart is on my tongue. I tell people. And in today's society, people have a hard time with that. And especially if you're speaking truth to power. And a lot of people don't want to hear the truth. And that has been my biggest impediment in my life, in my career. And will I change? No.
Well, let me say this. When you and I talked the very first time, when our mutual friend gave me your number and we said we're going to connect, you know how it is, you going to call me or am I going to call you, whatever, we connected. And within 5 minutes you said, Corey, just so you know, I don't pull punches, I'm going to tell you exactly how it is. And you started saying some pretty rough stuff. I'm like, okay, all right, I like this guy, I can handle it, all right, I got it. This is good, this is good. And I hadn't read the book yet, I didn't even know there was a book at that point. So now I read the book, put that conversation, that initial first impression into the book, and now talking to you, doing this podcast, it's all making sense. It's all, I wasn't going to pull punches and say that. No, he was his own worst enemy. Like I wrote right down where it said there were your own transgressions would prevent your promotions. right? Your own transgression. But you said also everybody has little quirks.
Yeah.
You know, one of the lines I like to step out of the book. Now you talk about insecurity with Ashley specifically. Was that specific or was it like general? Like specifically you, was that just a general kind of insecurity that people would have about their significant others being thousands of miles away?
That's a good question. It's both. And here's why. I told you about my childhood. It's not having a mother figure in my life, not understanding how to express love, not even how to experience love. You know, and for me, love was just hooking up, the physical, and it really wasn't the emotional connection. So the insecurities came from my own insecurities, but also the insecurities that were put on me or imprinted on me by my father, and then reinforced through the Marine Corps. You know and I know, in the military, in the police profession, a lot of infidelity on both sides. And there's the stories and they're reinforced and you see them happen. So having that in the back of your mind, plus your own individual insecurities, being removed from somebody geographically for 10,000 miles and not having communications. It's not like we didn't have text messaging and cell phones. I had to wait on a phone call line a half an hour long, half mile for 2 hours
Right.
to just say hi for 10 minutes. And you didn't know if you were getting through.
Right.
So all of those things combined made it really hard. You remember there's a part in the book where at one point I was like, done. I can't tell the specific thing what made it happen, but I was like, I was done. I didn't want that burden on me anymore. And to be honest, that followed me through the majority of my life, not having that burden to worry about. If you're connected with somebody and you have this emotional attachment, you set yourself up to be hurt. And if you don't have it, you can't get hurt.
Can't get hurt by that.
But on the flip side, if you don't experience that, it's really a hollow life.
Yeah.
Kind of how I talk about it. So.
Yeah, it's catch-22 would not be the right way to describe it because that was very deep what you said. I like the way you summed it up at the end. If you don't experience that, then it's a hollow life. You don't know that it's hollow because you've never experienced it. You don't have anything to compare it to. Hollywood, those two people in the park or whatever, but I don't know what that is. I also don't know what it's like to drive a Tesla. I see them. I don't know what it's like to drive one. I don't know what it sounds like either. They're quiet. I got a couple more questions.
Yeah.
We're going to take one more break and then we'll finish it up. Some decompression trips taken to Camp 15 were great. I'm taking some of these quotes out. However, their effect lasted only a few hours. So when you did get to come out of the environment, right? And when I'm talking about the environment, we're talking about what we mentioned earlier: the dark, endless, cold, windy, hot, dusty, rainy. The good stuff, the great weather.
Life.
The times you did get to separate from that, you would go to Camp 15. Okay, so tell me about that.
I can remember that the drive there, there's this just feeling of like, you're just like, yeah, it's like going on vacation. Like a kid going on vacation. You're like, yeah, we're going to the beach. I can't wait to spend. And then I got there and you're like a kid running around. You get to go to the PX, you get to buy potato chips and Pringles and beef jerky and get more foot powder, and then you can go get a shower, and the showers are like funny, and they like, not like you think walking into like a nice hotel with showers. I mean, it's tents that had, and not even like on the male tents, it's just shower heads and a bunch of dudes in there naked, and so it was something to look forward to. But you get all your stuff and you're on the drive back and you're smoking cigarettes or you have a chew in and you're eating shit food and you're going back to shit. And the good thing for me was that Belinda was there. And I got to see a woman. I got to be with a woman. Just talking and hanging out, and later on that obviously went down a different direction, and that was really good because I didn't know, but that's what I longed for, to have a woman in my life, and a woman that I cared for, and a woman that I could love, and a woman who loved me, and that was like the really important thing. So they were terrible. They were emotional roller coasters, all jacked up. Get there, and then imagine summer vacations.
All right, thanks. So welcome back from those. Before we left, I left James with my overarching, I don't want to say synopsis or quote or anything like that. I don't consider myself to be that cognizant. But a theme I kept getting was their continuous inability to dictate or control your circumstances throughout this book. Also, never really had the ability to truly handle the impact of those circumstances.
And like I was saying, in that environment, it's very frustrating. You have all this training, you have all this knowledge, you have all these skills, and you want to apply those, and you don't have the authority or ability. And then your destiny is basically controlled by external forces that you really have no influence over. Mm-hmm. Now, this is where it became real. I go through a divorce. I am given custody of 2 of my 3 children. I raised them for a year by myself. I go back to court, and I have a judge who gives full legal custody to my ex-wife. Mm-hmm. I'm no longer allowed to see my children except for 30-minute Skype calls. Have to go through all of these bells and whistles and hoops. Now, there's never physical abuse, no mental abuse. I raised them. My ex-wife gave them to me. And then the court has all this influence on you, mm-hmm. and authority over you. And I'm helpless. And helpless is the worst place to be. You have darkness and helplessness and hopelessness. And there's a phrase in Latin America, La Esperanza, something like that. So when you've lost hope, you've lost everything. Mm-hmm. And that is the way I felt then, and the way I feel now is I am hopeless or helpless because the judicial system has so much influence over me. And it's you know, for me, that's probably one of the most difficult things that I am faced with and have to handle and manage. Mm-hmm. Having all of these skill sets and all of this knowledge and all this understanding and education, and then having one person be able to say, you can't see your kids. Has that person ever seen me interact with my kids, how much they love me, how much I love them, and do things? And he did it because of his own personal bias. Mm-hmm. And his daughter was murdered by her male college roommate, and in a really egregious way. He basically took a bag and shoved it down her throat, put another one over her head, duct taped her neck. She died of asphyxiation.
Terrible.
Terrible, horrible. I feel bad for this judge, mm-hmm. but it does not give him the right to then practice law and be a judge and administer these rulings. And I'm not the only one. Other people have suffered. Mm-hmm. And now I had to appeal it, and now it's in the Virginia Supreme Court, and he's now on the Virginia Supreme Court. So this is where I served 23 years in the military, 4 combat tours, and my life is being torn apart by a judicial system that I was trying to defend. And one individual whose worldviews are obviously distorted by what's happened and impact his life. The book is just, it's a microcosm of my life, and it kind of like foretells what's happening right now in my life. Mm-hmm. And Judge Mann, read the book. It'll help you. And and I will continue to fight. But then again, I also learned from the book, and that I have this will that will not be broken, and I will not stop fighting until the kids are back in my life.
Right.
And do I want revenge? There's a topic that came up in the book several times.
Yeah, there is. So let's hit it.
Revenge is, I look at it in 2 ways. Karma's a bitch. Mm-hmm. And if you saw in the book, everyone who kind of did me wrong kind of got it in the end. And I believe in karma. But there's also the point that you want revenge. It's a natural feeling. Trust me, everybody wants to get revenge.
Of course.
It's not like oh, I'm such a good person, I don't ever want revenge. No, I want revenge. I want my revenge. I want my pound of flesh. But as I wrote in the book, those feelings kind of dissipated as I moved on. And that's the same thing. Do I want my revenge for Judge Man? Yeah. Do I want my revenge for the therapists, the lawyers, and everybody? Yeah. But what's more important? My kids.
Yeah.
And when they're back in my life, I don't give a shit about any of them.
Yeah. And some would say the best revenge would be you doing a media tour or something with your girls, your kids sitting next to you. You know what I mean? With their arms around you and saying, so thanks, so glad our daddy's back in life all the time, that we can go on this, experience this with him, and explain that the I don't want to say rules, the passion that he has for your upbringing and for your helping yourself in difficult situations helped us.
Yeah.
In the difficult situations.
Well, you read the dedication.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can recite the dedication, but basically I said, hey, just remember one thing: SISCOs don't lie, cheat, or steal, and always do the right thing.
Exactly.
And
exactly. I love that.
Yeah. So that's that was really, that question that stung, because it really kind of talks to the heart of what happened to me then and what's happening to me now.
All right. So this is the second word in this book is war. And James is in a war when he is writing this journal, and bad things happen in war, and this book talks about some of those things, but there's a gentleman, a soldier, a Marine named Mike, that something traumatizing happened to. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
No. Oh yeah. So Mike Cook, he was a good friend of mine. Mike and I, we got to Recon Battalion at a very similar time. We had trained together. We had gone on operations together. We had deployments together. We did a med cruise together. We were really good friends. We hung out. And so Mike, you read the book. Mike died. Mike, he got blown up by a hand grenade. And the part of the story, and I won't reveal the whole thing, but here's, what happened, you read. So we had just gotten off our first patrol, and we were sitting in a group. We were sitting in a little circle, and Mike was sitting here, and I was sitting here. I was right next to Mike. And we were all reading mail and eating. When you come off a mission, you kind of want to decompress and do all that. And so there was Lance Corporal Stroud was standing by the Humvee about 20 feet away, and he's like, hey, Corporal Cisco, can you help me with the KY gear, which is the radio gear? Mm-hmm. And typical Marines. I'm like, fuck you. What are you, a retard? Do it yourself, know? Right. And everybody started laughing, because it was funny. Mm-hmm. And people were like, oh my God, that's so funny. You called him a retard? Yeah, go to combat, be under these circumstances, hang out with Marines, and trust me, that's the PG version. Yeah. So anyway, we were all laughing, and Mike, he looked over at me, and kind of funny way, he goes, bad dog. Mm-hmm. And I started laughing. I'm like, yeah, I was kind of a dick. So I get up and I walk over and I start helping Lance Corporal Stroud with the KY gear. I'm over there for about 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. I hear this large explosion, boom, and it was right from where I was sitting. And I go, what the fuck? And I go running over, and I get there, and Mike had been taking off his 782 gear, and we had our hand grenades on the 782 gear, and I don't know, but I guess one of the hand grenades came off. It fell between his legs. He tried to pick it up. It exploded. So I get there, and I'm the first person there. And it was Woody was the corpsman, and I forget who the other guys were, but they're like yelling and screaming because they took shrapnel, and they're crawling away. And I get there, and I'm standing right in front of Mike, and I'm just looking at him, and both his arms are blown off. And if anybody's seen a hand grenade or go off, it's not like it, because there's so much heat. There's not a lot of blood. It's just powder burn. And so both his arms are gone. His leg was just hanging there, and everything was black, and he just sat up, and his head just went down. And I've got a lot of EMT medical training. When you go into recon, you get, we used to IV each other for fun when we were hungover, and you could do trachs and things like that. And I just looked at him, and I knew he was dead. And then the corpsman knocked me out of the way, and they started working on him, and they medevaced everybody out. And that was, for me, I never probably experienced anything like that in my tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, I was on a green on blue incident in Afghanistan where 3 government contractors were killed, and that was, I don't want to say traumatizing because I don't want to sound like a bitch, but that was
it is traumatizing.
That was the most traumatizing thing that I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
And
had you been working with those guys, those contractors? Or was that like your first day? You join up, go into an op, and this happens? Or
they were on a training range, and we were doing training with the Afghans and with the contractors, and we were on a different range, and they went hot, and I was the first one over there. It's a really funny story. There's this Army second lieutenant. I come running in, and I'm a Navy lieutenant commander, equivalent to a major, and I'm like, what's going on here? Because it's just got done going hot. And I'm like, what's going on here? And he's looking at me. He's all confused. I go, who's in charge? And he looks at me and he goes, you are, sir. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? But no, so there was no attachment. I think having that attachment of being a good friend, and then as you know in the book, what I found out that next day.
Right. Yeah.
No one could ever understand that feeling. I have a hard time trying to write that feeling. Imagine the paradox.
Yeah.
Where your best friend is dead, and the next day you want to kill him.
Right.
But he's already dead.
Right. And like that, those are the burdens that you're walking around with, and it goes back to what you and I have been echoing is not being in control of your circumstances. Hard to really trust that who's there for you now is going to be there for you tomorrow. And in all walks of life. So I know that was difficult to share, and I want to thank you for sharing that. And I've had some training in helping people deal with trauma on the law enforcement first responder side, and it is traumatizing. And it doesn't. We don't say that it lessens you as a man being able to say that you've had a trauma. I mean, you carry around a backpack. Our instructor, the Deputy Attorney General of the state of New Jersey, when he's retired, he now runs it. Resilient Minds on the front lines. Police, fire, EMS, former military, current military, anybody needs resiliency. They think they're in a dark hole. There's many places. There's going to be links and phone numbers in the show notes, but I just want you to know Resilient Minds on the front lines are right here in New Jersey, and they partnered with Acadia Health Systems to help anybody who has that trauma. But they say that just first responders, 5 or 6 traumas a day, that the average person would be like, oh my goodness, 99% of people who hear you tell that story, they're going to stop in their tracks. They're going to stop. Or if I share, to try and get somebody to listen, hey, you got to hear him tell this one story about this thing that happened. Like, wow, and he's sitting there talking to you about this? He's okay talking to us? I don't know. He knows he needs to talk about it. I'm sure he feels called, right? Am I right?
So this is how I'm going to answer that question. It was harder to talk about this than it was to experience it. So imagine keeping this bottled up for 32 years and then reading the war journal, and it was like ripping a Band-Aid off. I literally came out of a therapy session for this counseling for my divorce, read the war journal, and when I got done reading it, I was bawling my eyes out. And it takes more courage to talk about these things and to open up about them than to experience them and keep them compressed. Mm-hmm. This is when I go back to like talking about David Goggins. It's easy to be hard, it's hard to be smart. The physical pain, good. The emotional pain, tough. So it is still difficult at times to talk about these things, but it's harder to keep them locked up.
Right.
And you have to talk about them, or else it's gonna eat away at you. And I'm happy I do. Does it bring back bad memories? Yeah, but it's better to talk about it and get through it than just bottle everything up.
Kind of gives you a sense of control, right? Now I'm controlling when I experience this memory. I'm controlling how I experience this memory. Maybe not 10 minutes later, I might not be able to. 10 days later now, but little bits, you know. I got 10 seconds of control over something that normally could demoralize my whole entire day.
Yeah. Well, control is an illusion. Everybody who seeks control, it is an illusion, because things can be taken away from you in an instant. What you can control is how you perceive things, how you act, how you behave. And the other thing, and this is Kevin Corporatism, I love this quote: "The only influence you have on me is the influence I allow you to have on me." And if you understand that, I mean, your world's a better place. You don't let people influence you in the way you don't want to be influenced. And you create your worldview and your narrative to make sure that you're happy. And not happiness in the superficial way.
Right.
Happiness in a deep, meaningful way. Being selfless, helping people, being a good person. These are the things that bring me joy.
Yeah.
The book, I'm not going to make any money on it. As a matter of fact, I'll take a loss on it. It costs like $3,000 to publish it. I get $2.12 on Amazon for each book I sell.
All right, so we need 1,500 people to buy this book, and then it can be a push.
No, I don't even care. Like I said, the 3 phone calls are the push.
There you go.
I don't care. And the thing that I will have the rest of my life being a best-selling author that my kids will have, and they're not old enough to realize it now, but when they're in their 20s and 30s, I'm like, hey, my dad was a best-selling author. He wrote this book. He dedicated it to us. Boom.
I don't preach toxic positivity, but I would be surprised if this book didn't cause people to make phone calls, maybe not to you, but to somebody to get help. I mean, it would be impossible for that not to be the case.
I hope it did.
Quite frankly, it would be impossible for that not to be the case. Just in my 27 years involved in law enforcement, and then helping start our chaplain program with our police department. Just a funny story that I'll tell you about our chaplain program. So our chaplain, he's out of Fellowship Alliance Chapel. His name is Eric Jarvis. He's also a Class 2 police officer. So he gets out of the academy and he gets sworn in, and he just puts it out on Facebook, I'm getting sworn in. So my wife and I had gone, at that time, my fiance had gone to their church a couple of times. We're bouncing between churches. And I said, let's just go to his swearing in. He's a really nice guy. Let's just go to his swearing in. So that's like July 25th or something like that, 2018. We go to his swearing in. He's there, his wife's there, his daughters are there. Shook his hand, got selfies with him and everything like that. 3 days later, my wife gets a phone call that her dad has stage 4 cancer, and he's over in Slovakia, and it's not good. They're giving him a couple months. So she said, we got to get married, and then we have to go over there and then have another reception over there, because I want my dad to see us married. So she had to plan a wedding and to get 4 people into Slovakia in 10 days. We needed somebody that we trusted to marry us. Remember what had just happened 2-3 days ago? We'd just out of the blue just gone and supported a friend at his swearing in. Again, not that he would have said no, but it made me feel easier making the phone call. Hey, Pastor Eric, Dagmar and I need to get married on Monday. Can you do that? And then I remember who I'm talking about. Not because of that. I was like, it's not because of that. Then I explained to him. He goes, Corey, it would give me great pleasure. So he threw a suit on. Him and his wife came over that day, performed the ceremony, and it was great, being able to have that balance in there, and knowing he's such a great person, like, and authentic. And that's what I want people to gather from this conversation, from this book, and from what I'm hearing from you, is that you're authentic. Good, bad, indifferent, you're authentic. And I think that is the most important lesson.
Well, I'll say this. Number one, I don't know if your wife's father passed away,
He
but
did.
Congratulations on getting that done.
Thank you.
And number two, I've been called worse by better. What I mean by that is, this is who I am. I know who I am. I like who I am. I'm confident in who I am. And as I said earlier in the podcast, what is in my heart is on my tongue. And, I'll never change who I am because I enjoy who I am. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try and improve myself or learn more things. I'm not going to be arrogant and say, oh, I know about this or that. I enjoy who I am. And that book helped me get to the point where I like who I am. I accept who I am. Imagine being in, so this is how I equate it. In combat, you're being torn by leadership and this and that and all these things, and they're pulling you in different directions. And it questions you as a soldier or as a Marine. Now, fast forward in my life, here I am going through a custody battle. I'm meeting with therapists and lawyers and men's advocates. Everybody's pulling you in different directions, and everybody's got you questioning yourself and questioning what's going on, and you start going down to the slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, for me, I'm like, whoa, I pumped the brakes. Chill. Who are you, Mr. Psychologist, to talk to me for 8 hours and have insights on me that the War Journal helped me understand? Or who are you, lawyer, because you have a law degree, telling me how to parent my child? Pump the brakes.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, and what it really made me do was maybe go, hey, I didn't make it to 54 years in my life because I'm stupid or I'm ignorant or I'm arrogant. I made it here based upon, like as you learned in the book, determination, mm-hmm. will, fortitude, faith, all of these things, education. Leverage my own internal and move forward. Execute a plan. And that's kind of the really big theme that I learned in my life. Mm-hmm. I will never allow these people to influence me again. Yeah, they can take money from me and do all of these things or keep my kids away from me. Eventually my kids are going to be back in my life. Eventually all of these wrongs will be, righted. And just don't question yourself. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Everybody out there, you're not perfect. But rely on yourself and trust in yourself. Mm-hmm. Believe in yourself, because at the end of the day, that's all you got.
Yeah. Yeah. Believe in those who poured into you. Believe in yourself. Have trusted advisors, right? Trusted advisors, right? This has been a really, really deep conversation, and you and I don't have any history together, right? We've got a couple phone calls, right? Never even Zoomed. We'd have walked right by each other.
Yeah, you're like standing at the flagpole.
Yeah,
like, who's that?
Yeah, like I see somebody at the flagpole, but I don't know who I'm supposed to be looking for. So, but it's been a very, very, a very deep book, very profound book, and a very profound discussion. But in the book, there's some lighthearted moments in it. And I'm just going to throw this out there, and I kind of want to. You tell me when you're done. But my goal is I want you to kind of finish up on where's your helmet?
That's so funny. But that's the culmination of and I'll tell the story. But the funniest one was, we're driving to the breach, mm-hmm. and there I was with a green bandana on my head, wearing my boots, playing Guns N' Roses behind the 50 cal with the American flag, and that one is probably the one that sticks with me the most, because we're here getting ready to go into combat, and I'm like, what's up? But the helmet one was really funny, because you have this second lieutenant, went to the Citadel. He's like all the hard charger guy, but skinny, dorky guy, glasses, and but he's like kind of nerdy too. And anyway, so we start taking. I'm on radio watch, and we start taking artillery into our position. Now, like I said earlier, everybody wants to be a hero. The minute the shit hits the fan, they want to be a hero, unless it's like real engagement. Then they're like, oh shit, I don't want any part of that. I want to stand over here on the side and do the little easy stuff. So. Anyway, we start taking artillery fire, and I'm on radio watch. And now I've done 9-line briefs, in my sleep. I've practiced them.
So for our viewers, a 9-line brief.
It's just you have 9 lines, and you have to fill out the information, mm-hmm. and each line, and then you send each line, like line 1, Alpha India Charlie, blah 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 blah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and you send that back and to higher headquarters. Okay. So I'm filling out the 9-line brief, and imagine this: we're taking artillery, everybody's freaking out. And we're in the COC, the Command Operations Center, which is an underground tent, and it's dark out. And imagine this: so everybody starts running in the tent, and they have like the 2 doors, so you can't let the light out. And all the officers, all the senior enlisted, are just piling it now. This small tent, probably twice the size of this, is just filled with like everybody. And everybody's like trying to figure out what's going on, and people are yelling and screaming, and I'm trying to do the 9-line brief. And my second lieutenant wants to be part of the action. So he sits his ass down next to me, and he's like, seeing what I'm doing. And at one point, he goes, he tries to grab the mic, the handset, because I'm talking to, 2nd Marine Division headquarters. And I'm like, we're fighting over the mic. I'm like, give me the...
This is like TV.
Yeah, I'm like stronger than him too. And I'm like, give me the mic. Get away. And I get done doing the 9-line brief, and, typical officer kind of move. He's like, everywhere you went over there, you had to carry your gas mask, your rifle, and your helmet. And he's like, where's your rifle? And I'm like, because I was on watch, I had put it over in the corner. He's like, get your rifle and gas mask and helmet. I'm like, whatever. And I had already done the brief, so I was like, whatever. But he wants to get on the radio. So I'm like looking because think it's packed. I'm like trying to get through people. I find my gas mask and my helmet. And I come back, and this is the old M16A2, that long ass thing.
Yeah.
I get out my back. And I sit down, and they're back at the radio handset. I had to like nudge him out of the way, like to get back in my seat. Right? And anyway, at the same time, the company commander comes walking over, and he's like, "What's the status?" And here I am with my gas mask and my rifle, no helmet, and he's like all in his battle gear, and he's like, "Well, sir, Corporal SISCO just gave." I'm like, gave the 9-line brief. I'm like, sir, we're waiting for and I just hit the high points, And the lieutenant, trying to like just dime me out, was like, where's your helmet? And I look at him, and I kind of look at the company commander, and I'm like, I don't know, it was in here. And the company commander, so we're both sitting there, we're facing forward, and the company commander, and on the back of the helmets, you would have these ranger tabs, which were little glow-in-the-dark things, and then you would write your name between them. And the company commander takes the helmet off of the second lieutenant and puts it on my head. And he goes, I don't know, where's your helmet, Lieutenant? He's like, ha!
So you stole your helmet on top of everything else.
But unknowingly, he ran in the tent, grabbed my helmet because he forgot his. But if you want, I have one more funny story.
Please.
Now, this one's not in the book.
Okay.
Because I just didn't have time to put it in there, and it just didn't fit. It was on one of my trips back to Camp 15. We didn't have equipment, and I wrote in the book we didn't have claymores. Well, I think I wrote.
Yeah, you wrote a lot of stuff that you guys didn't have.
But not what we did anyway. Okay. So I go back to Camp 15, and I'm like, fuck it. Let's go to the armory, the ammunition depot. And back then, in recon, I had a 9mm, and we had these hoodies, which were camouflage, and we didn't wear rank. So anywhere I went, people would salute me. They thought I was an officer, because I had my 9mm. It was pretty funny. I was a corporal, and people were like staff sergeants salute me. Oh, yeah, at ease. Damn, young lieutenant. Anyway, I pull into the ammo depot, and there's this gunnery sergeant, a staff sergeant, and they're shooting the shit. And I come walking in, and I'm standing there for like 30 seconds, a minute. I'm like, they obviously see me. I go, hey, Gunny, can I get some fucking help here? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, sir. He comes running over. Now he thinks I'm an officer.
Right.
And
he's not going to ask.
No, not going to ask. It's too late. I'm like, I'm with the recon unit. We're a couple miles off the border. We need this. Oh, do you have a vehicle? I'm like, I got my driver outside. And my driver, he's like, he looks at me like, I'm like,
yeah, just go with it.
Just go with it. So pull the vehicle around, just load the shit up. Anyway, we have claymores and hand grenades and cases of hand grenades and AT-4, and ammunition. And anyway, we get done loading everything up. We drive back, and I met Belinda. I got the intel, made a phone call, drove back. No shower, and didn't have time. Didn't have time. So we drive back, and I get all the team leaders together. I'm like, hey, man, bring all your vehicles over. Let's go. It was like Christmas. It was literally like Christmas, throwing cases of hand grenades into vehicles. Anyway, the same gunny who busted me for the Jack Daniels, sees what's going on, comes like walking over. What's going on over here? And everybody does the ensign salute, as we call it. I don't know. Because when you're an ensign, you go, I don't know. And he's like, where's all this stuff come from? I'm like, Gunny, I got it. You know, everybody, nobody wants to dime me out.
Right. But they were thankful that you said that.
And I'm like, no, yeah. He's like, what happened here? And I'm like, I just went back to Camp 15. And he's like, that's it. That's the last straw. And he gets the lieutenant, marches me into the CO again. Now the CO, like, once again, we already had the incident where with the intel, and or no, the intel this was right after, because I still had the intel hidden, and the CO's like, the lieutenant's like, Corporal SISCO went back to Camp 15. He took a vehicle on his own. He didn't ask permission. He didn't fill ROE again. Didn't fill out the, you know, he just left. But so security back then, nobody even knew I was gone the whole day.
Right,
you know?
right.
Did whatever. So he's like, and they went to the ammunition depot and they got all of this stuff. And the company commander's like, Jim, is this true? And I'm like, yes, sir. I said, we've been asking for this stuff for weeks. We've been filling out the forms. We give them to the staff sergeant, give them to the lieutenant. He goes, well, what did you do? I said, well, I just drove to Camp 15. They have a huge warehouse of ammunition. They'll give you whatever you want. And he's like, what did you do? And I was like, I just told the gunnery sergeant what I needed. He goes, who signed for all this stuff? I went, he did. I signed Lieutenant Russell. So there were some really comical times over there. I mean, there was like things that happened, like the staff sergeant coming in and starts screaming, and Coots is like, shut the fuck up, asshole. And he's like, sir? So, and I write one thing in the book. During the most difficult times or periods in your life or stressful times, you can always find happiness or joy if you know where to look for it.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe with a person or an event or a thing. So you could be in this dark period of your life. You can find joy. You can find happiness.
So this book, thank you. This book covers some dark periods. Page 67. I'm just gonna leave that there. Okay. Page 67. If you know where to look for it,
What's
as
on
he just
67?
said. What we were just talking about.
Oh,
I know you probably don't know the pages.
I don't know
I
the
just put
pages.
the pages down when I write my comments, but that's kind of where the helmet story came from. So if you want to start on a good note, but I highly recommend you read the whole book. So any closing notes or anything, or how people can get a hold of you? All this stuff will be linked below. You'll be able to click on his webpage, his bio, whatever contact information he gives, and his preferred methods of obtaining the book.
What I'll say is this. My hope, my goal for the book is, like I said, I'm not trying to make money or be on the Oprah book show or book club. I want people to read the book to help them. And what I really want is, when you read the book, give it to somebody who you know, because we all know somebody who needs help. Read the book, hope it helps you, and then give it to somebody who you know could use this book. And that's all I want. And if you do that, that would be amazing. Because there are so many people out there who, like I said, who've been through worse than me and need this. There's some people who don't have the strength or resilience to write a book or talk about it. And hopefully this acts as a catalyst to help them do that. And that's all I can say.
Jim, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being so open, and thank you for being so authentic. And that's the message that I want everybody to see, is authenticity. That will get you farther and further than anything. So stay safe, be ready, and train now.